And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Our biggest story of the day in Georgia. A sergeant there shot 5 soldiers today at one of the country's largest Army bases before he was quickly tackled by other Fort Stewart troops here. Fox News' Jared Halpern has more.
5 soldiers were shot and wounded at an Army base in Georgia. It happened at Fort Stewart, just 40 miles southwest of Savannah, with the shooting taking place in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area.
Our wounded soldiers were initially evacuated to Wynn Army Community Hospital right here on Fort Stewart. All arrived in stable condition, and 3 of the 5 required surgical intervention.
According to the Army, gunfire broke out around 10:56 a.m., with the active shooter captured 40 minutes later at 11:35 a.m.
We have identified the alleged shooter as Sergeant Quornelius Radford, an automated logistics sergeant assigned to 2nd Brigade Combat Team. The shooting occurred at the soldier's place of work. It did involve his co-workers. We're still not certain about the motivations.
Fort Stewart, the largest Army base east of the Mississippi River, is home to more than 10,000 soldiers and their families. The shooting triggered a lockdown of the sprawling complex that has since been lifted. Some nearby schools were also impacted.
I would also like to thank the brave soldiers who immediately intervened and subdued the shooter. These soldiers, without a doubt, prevented further casualties.
Following the shooting, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp released a statement in support of victims. It read in part, quote, "We are keeping the victims, their families, and all those who answer the call to serve in our hearts and prayers, and we ask that Georgians everywhere do the same." According to the White House, the president has been briefed on the incident. Homeland Security is also monitoring the situation, and the FBI is ready to assist if needed as authorities investigate a motive. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Jared, thanks so much. Out live there to the White House, President Trump commented on this very shooting in the Oval Office today. Let's listen.
Before we begin, I'd like to say a few words about the shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia. As you know, 5 people were seriously wounded and 2 very, very seriously hurt around 11 o'clock this morning. The shooter is now in custody, and the Army Criminal Investigation Division is on site to ensure that the perpetrator of this atrocity, which is exactly what it is, will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The entire nation is praying for the victims and their families, and hopefully they'll fully recover, and we can put this chapter behind, but we're not going to forget what happened. We're going to take very good care of this person that did this horrible person.
All right, President Trump there with those comments in the Oval Office today. Let's talk about all of this. Let's bring into the conversation right now a familiar face to all of you, national security analyst and expert and retired Marine intelligence officer, Hal Kemper. He joins me. Hal, thanks for joining on this really, really scary story. And this is kind of the headline here, that all of these soldiers right now are in stable condition. They're all going to be expected to survive here. That is good news. I want to put up the photo here of the suspect who allegedly did this. Take a look at this. So this is 28-year-old Quornelius Radford, Hal. He's a sergeant there in the Army. He joined the Army back in January of 2018 as an automated logistical specialist. This is from Liberty County Sheriff's Office, I believe, in the Jacksonville, Florida area, of a mugshot from a previous DUI arrest, and we believe that happened in May of this year. In the press conference we're about to show after we speak to you, these Army officials were not made aware of this DUI arrest. Shouldn't they have known that?
Well, sometimes it's passed over automatically. Sometimes, for example, he could get it's a misdemeanor arrest, but it could be something where he just gave his driver's license and they didn't automatically pass it to the Army because maybe they didn't know he was in the Army. Things like that do happen. So I don't put too much import into in that particular part of it. But it is interesting. It may be an indication that he was a little unstable, that he was having problems in his personal life. Obviously, something's going on because he went to work with a 9mm pistol and started shooting up his coworkers. So that tells you something is definitely off.
Yeah. So how we know the shooting happened at the soldier's place of work on the base. It involved his coworkers. I have to ask, you mentioned, and this was reported, he used his own weapon here. This was not his military-issued weapon. How would he have been able to get his own weapon on base, Hal?
Just probably put in his car and drove on base.
Okay.
You know, look, we don't, unless there's some other reason, you know, like, for example, there's a terrorist threat or something, you know, a hybrid warfare threat or some big threat reason. We don't normally lock down the base and search every car with dogs and look everywhere unless there's some significant reason. A base has a lot of people working on it. I think there's like 30-some thousand, actually more than at Fort Stewart. It's a large base. You know, 3rd Infantry Division is there. It's a very large base. And so people are going on and off base all the time. So you can't stop, physically be impossible to stop and search every car. And if you're a soldier assigned to the base, you have your, you know, ID card, and there is a certain amount of trust and confidence that we put in our soldiers, you know, all of our service members that work on the bases. And so, you know, it wouldn't be that hard to bring a weapon on base. You know, for a civilian to bring a weapon on base that's not assigned to the base, yeah, it would be much more difficult, and there might be a more extensive search of the vehicle and a lot of other things going on. But not that difficult to bring your weapon on the base. Interestingly, though, a lot of people seem to think that on military bases, there are soldiers running around or Marines running around with weapons all the time. That's actually not the case. Actually, it's very difficult to get a weapon on base. You have to go to an armory. You have to have your card. You have to sign out for the weapon. So it would be more likely than not you would see him using a personal weapon. And if you go back historically and you look at active shooter situations on base, it usually, to include Major Nadal Hussain, who was essentially a terrorist, an Al-Qaeda operative. If you go back, it was their own personal weapons they used. Using a military weapon for something like this would be very, very difficult. There's a lot of protocols in place that would prevent something like that from happening.
Yeah, just a little more detail on the nature of this and his background. According to his sources, he has no known prior discipline or mental health issues reported on base. Hal, I would imagine that's going to be investigated even further to get a fuller picture of that very question. They have no reason to believe, though, this is a terror attack. And soldiers tackled him and stopped the shooting. You could make the argument this could have been so much worse, right, Hal?
Well, you know, it's interesting in active shooter training, and you know I do active shooter training, we talk about run, hide, fight. If an active shooter breaks out, we say, you know, first thing you should do is try and run, get away. Second thing you should do is try to hide, barricade where you are if you can't run away, and then fight. The difference being this is a military base with soldiers.
Yeah.
And for them, if they see the sound of gunfire, the smell of cordite, they're more inclined to figure out what to do about it. They're actually inclined to actually solve the problem, if you will. So with them, I'm not saying they reverse run, hide, fight, but I am not surprised to see a bunch of soldiers turn around, and a lot of these are probably infantry soldiers, and they turn around and they tackle him to the ground, got the gun out of his hands, because they have more knowledge and understanding of that situation probably than anybody else out there. Yeah. And they are trained to do stuff like that. It just comes instinctively. So I'm not surprised to see in this particular situation that his co-workers, you could say, but these are soldiers. They went in, they tackled, they took the weapon away right away, and they saved lives, and they stopped other people from being seriously injured.
Yeah, it's a grievous injury to themselves, no doubt. Hal, lastly, the U.S. military has its own jurisdiction. I think that's widely known. And so I have to ask, will this be prosecuted in a martial court, or will a civilian court take it over, or dual track? Do we know yet?
Oh, it'll definitely be military. In fact, there was already discussion of that. It's under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That's a separate justice system that the military has. If you've ever seen like that movie, A Few Good Men with Tom Cruise, that's where you see a court martial. It's a military justice system. There are a lot of protections. In fact, some would say there's more protections for a defendant under the UCMJ than there is in civilian courts in some way, but it will be under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. There is absolutely no reason that I see that this would ever go to a civilian court. Every once in a while, there's something, the circumstances are such that it makes more sense to have them prosecuted in a civilian court. For example, if it happened off base or something like that. But this happened on base. This involves soldiers. The shooter was a soldier. Absolutely. This will be a UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice sort of thing. and it'll be prosecuted as such.
And of course, the why in each one of these stories we cover here on Live Now, the motive, the intention here. Don't know that yet. It may still be too early. And officials did say that they were not going to kind of entertain questions on that specific motive just yet because they just don't know and it's too early. So hopefully we'll get more details, more reporting on that very question in the next couple of hours and days. Hal Kempfer, as always, thanks so much for your time. Talk soon.